Hi, boys and girls. This is Miss Sweet. Today I am here to talk to you about comparing and contrasting. What do those two big words mean? They seem really complicated, but they're not that complicated at all. Comparing is figuring out how two things are alike, and contrasting is figuring out how two things are different, maybe more than two things. But that's what we're going to start with today. So if I take a look here, I have two things that are just laying around my house. And I can find so many different ways that they are alike and so many different ways that they're different. If I'm thinking about how they're alike, well, they're both writing instruments. I can write with them both. I might use them both in an art project, or maybe I could use them both to make a sign of some sort. But if I think about how they're different, the pencil is yellow and red and silver, and the Sharpie is red and gray. If I think of other ways that they're different, the Sharpie marker on the outside is thick and fat, and the pencil on the outside is thin and skinny. If I think about how they write, the pencil is going to make a thin, dark line that I can erase if I make a mistake. If I think about how the Sharpie writes, it's going to make a very bold red mark that I'm not going to be able to erase if I make a mistake. So comparing and contrasting is easy. And when we compare and contrast things around us, we can use keywords. And we can also use those words when we read and write when we're comparing and contrasting. So let's take a look at some of our key words when we talk about that. We can compare characters in a story. We can compare settings in the story where things happened. We can also compare and contrast events or things that happened during that story. And some of the words that we like to use when we compare things are both. We could also describe them as being similar or the same. And we could also say as well as. I love chocolate ice cream, as well as Miss Craig, who also likes chocolate ice cream. But when we're contrasting two things and figuring out how they're different, we use different keywords. Some of those vocabulary words are differ. That's used as a verb. So I might differ from someone else in what my favorite thing is. We also use the word different, like we're describing something as different. We could also say in contrast, and we could also say however or on the other hand. So let's take a look at a quick video that's going to remind us of what comparing and contrasting is really all about. Are you ready to jam?
Vocabulary. We're comparing and contrasting. Everybody's doing it. In fact, we do it all the time. We compare and contrast when we're in the store, deciding what cereal to buy. We compare and contrast when we pick out what movie to see, or what player we want for our fantasy football league. I'll break it down for you. Comparing and contrasting, get with it. That's when you think how things are similar and different. When I compare things, I talk about how they're the same. When I contrast, it's the differences that I made. I analyze how they're similar and different. I look at them close, yeah, I get specific. I compare and contrast two books, three foods, two unicorn dudes named Boki and Sue. Yeah, that's how we do. But what's even wiser, before I write, I'ma use a graphic organizer, a Venn diagram. Yeah, I'll show you that. I just draw two circles that overlap. In the middle, I'll write whatever's the same, just list the differences in the other spaces. With three things to compare, what should I do then? I could add a third circle, so then let's get it in. I compare when I say how things are similar, like dollhouses and ponies, both miniature. I contrast when I say how things are different, give examples and get specific. You get it? I compare when I say how things are similar or the same. Yeah, I bet that sounds so familiar. I contrast when I say how things are different, give examples and get specific. You get it? Okay, I have to write an essay. Here's the prompt. Would you rather be a wolf or for a domesticated dog. Domesticated dog is like a pet. I'm gonna compare and contrast. That'll help me pick. I use transition words to help my readers know that I'm comparing and contrasting. Here we go. First, I'll compare how they're the same. Both have fur coats for the wind, snow, and rain. Domesticated dogs love to play together. Similarly, both puppies will play in any weather. Pet dogs have paws, wolves do as well. Likewise, they both will eat meat. Can you tell? To see how they're different, let's contrast. Most wolves have longer teeth, and that's a fact. If a wolf gets sick, there's no medicine. In contrast, pets go to the vet. They let them in. Domesticated dogs don't worry about food. They get fed in a bowl. I bet they love it too. Unlike a wolf, which has to hunt, and if it can't find much food, they go hungry for months. A wolf can run free, do anything it pleases, while domesticated doggies are tied up with leashes. So while I might like to be a pet dog for a while, I want to be free. That's the call of the wild. I'm a compare when I say how things are similar, like dollhouses and ponies, both miniature. I contrast when I say how things are different. Give examples and get specific. You get it? I compare when I say how things are similar or the same. Yeah, I bet that sounds so familiar. I contrast when I say how things are different. Give examples and get specific. You get it?
All right, that is a great way to remind us how to compare and contrast things. And one thing that I want you to remember when we compare and we contrast is that we use something called a Venn diagram. If you guys remember at all about our Venn diagrams that we have used in class before, they look a lot like this. And so here we are comparing bananas and lemons. The things that go around the outside are about the individual fruit, but things that how they are similar go in the middle. That's where both belong. So here we have everything about the banana. It's smooth and it's sweet. Over here we have things about the lemon. It's sour and bumpy, but they both are similar in that they are yellow and they are considered fruit. So what we're going to be doing now is we are going to be listening to a book called Chester's Way. This is a really great book. And one thing you're going to notice is that there is the two readers, one of them is using sign language, which she uses her hands to translate for people who are hard of hearing. I know it's amazing to watch her use sign language, but make sure you're also listening to the book, because we're going to be comparing and contrasting some of the characters after we finish reading. So let's get started and read Chester's Way. Are you ready?
Welcome to Storyline Online, brought to you by the Screen Actors Guild Foundation. I'm Katie LeClaire. And I'm Vanessa Morano. Today I'm using American Sign Language for the deaf and hard of hearing viewers. And we will be reading Chester's Way, written and illustrated by Kevin Hinckus. Chester had his own way of doing things.
Hello, my name is Chester. I like croquet and peanut butter and making my bed.
He always cut his sandwiches diagonally. He always got out of bed on the same side. And he never left the house without double knotting his shoes. Chester always had the same thing for breakfast: toast with jam, peanut butter. And he always carried a miniature first aid kit in his back pocket, just in case.
You definitely have a mind of your own,
Said Chester's mother. That's one way to put it, said Chester's father. Chester's best friend Wilson was exactly the same way. That's why they were best friends. Chester wouldn't play baseball unless Wilson played. And they never swung at the first pitch or slid headfirst. Wilson wouldn't ride his bike unless Chester wanted to. And they always used hand signals. Chester was hungry, Wilson was too. But they rarely ate between meals.
Some days I can't tell those two apart,
Said Wilson's mother.
Me either.
Said Wilson's father.
Chester and Wilson.
Wilson and Chester.
That's the way it was.
They loved to go on picnics. Once, when Wilson accidentally swallowed a watermelon seed and cried because he was afraid a watermelon plant would grow inside of him, Chester swallowed one too.
Don't worry, said Chester. Now, if you grow a watermelon plant, I'll grow one too.
Chester duplicated his Christmas list every year and gave a copy to Wilson because they always wanted the same things anyway.
For Halloween, they always dressed as things that went together. Salt and pepper shakers, 2 mittens on a string, ham and eggs. They really are 2 peas in a pod, said Chester's mother.
Looks like it, said Chester's father.
In spring, Chester and Wilson shared the same umbrella.
In winter, they never threw snowballs at each other.
In fall, they raked leaves together.
And in summer, they reminded each other to wear sunscreen so they wouldn't burn.
Chester and Wilson.
Wilson and Chester.
That's the way it was. And then Lily moved into the neighborhood. I'm Lily. I am the queen. I like everything.
Lily had her own way of doing things.
She wore band-aids all over her arms and legs to look brave.
She talked backwards to herself sometimes so no one would know what she was saying.
You do. And she never left the house without one of her nifty disguises.
Lily waved at all the cars that passed by, even if she didn't know who was in them.
And she always carried a loaded squirt gun in her back pocket, just in case. She definitely has a mind of her own, said Chester.
That's one way to put it, said Wilson.
When Lily asked Chester and Wilson to play, they said they were.
When she called them up on the phone, they disguised their voices and said they weren't home.
If Lily was walking on one side of the street, Chester and Wilson crossed to the other and hid. She's something else, said Chester.
Looks like it, said Wilson.
One day, while Chester and Wilson were practicing their hand signals, some older boys rode by, popping wheelies. They circled Chester and Wilson and yelled personal remarks.
Chester and Wilson didn't know what to do. Just when they were about to give up hope, a fierce-looking cat with horrible fangs jumped out of the bushes and frightened the older boys away.
Are you who I think you are? Chester asked the cat. Of course, the cat replied. Thank you, Lily, said Chester. You're welcome, Chester, said Lily.
Thank you, Lily.
Said Wilson.
You're welcome, Wilson, said Lily. I'm glad you were wearing a disguise, said Chester.
And I'm glad you had your squirt gun, said Wilson.
I always do, said Lily, just in case.
Afterward, Chester invited Lily over for lunch.
You have a muscle mouse cup, said Lily. Of course, said Chester. I do too, said Lily.
Same here, said Wilson.
Chester and Wilson cut their sandwiches diagonally.
Lily asked Chester's mother if she had cookie cutters, and she made stars and flowers and bells.
That's neat, said Chester.
Wow, said Wilson. That night, Lily invited Chester and Wilson to sleep over.
You have a nightlight, said Chester. Of course, said Lily. I do too, said Chester.
Same here, said Wilson. Chester and Wilson wanted toast with jam and peanut butter for breakfast the next morning.
Boring, said Lily. Try this instead. This is good, said Chester.
Whoa, said Wilson.
After that, when Lily asked Chester and Wilson to play, they said yes.
When she called them up on the phone, they had pleasant conversations.
And if Lily was walking on one side of the street, Chester and Wilson waved and ran to catch up with her.
Chester and Wilson taught Lily hand signals. And she taught them how to pop wheelies.
Lily taught Chester and Wilson how to talk backwards.
I'm a Nasu.
And they taught her how to double operations. Some days I just can't tell those three apart, said Lily's mother.
Me either, said Lily's father.
Chester and Wilson and Lily.
Lily and Wilson and Chester.
That's the way it was. For Halloween, they dressed as the three blind mice.
For Christmas, Lily gave Chester and Wilson nifty disguises. And they gave her a box of multicolored shoelaces, extra long for double knotting.
They loved to go on picnics. When Chester and Wilson told Lily about how they had each swallowed a watermelon seed once, Lily swallowed 3 of them. I'll grow a watermelon plant for each of us, she said.
In spring, Chester and Wilson and Lily shared the same umbrella.
In winter, they never threw snowballs at each other.
In fall, they raked leaves together.
And in summer, they reminded each other to wear sunscreen so they wouldn't burn.
Chester and Wilson and Lily.
Lily and Wilson and Chester.
That's the way it was.
And then Victor moved into the neighborhood.
So, Vanessa, what did you think?
I think that Victor, Lily, Chester, and Wilson are going to have a great time growing watermelon plants inside of themselves.
I agree.
All right. So the great part about that is there are so many different ways that we can compare and contrast Chester and Lily. But before we do that, we need to do something else. We need to summarize or story map our story. So if we're looking at our whole story that we just listened to, let's talk about the different elements of the story. The first thing we want to talk about is, who were the characters in our story? Well, if you remember, in the beginning, there was Chester, Wilson, and then who joined us later? We had Lily, who joined us later. And then at the very end of the story, we didn't hear much about him, but Victor joined us as well. The next thing we can take a look at when we think about the elements of our story is we can think about the setting of our story. There are several different places that we see the kids. We see them on the playground. We also see them in their neighborhood. And then we see them in each other's houses. So the setting changed throughout the story. Let's talk about the conflict of the story. If you're not sure what a conflict is, the conflict is the main problem that happened in the story. So there were several different problems that we heard in the story Chester's Way. But if I had to pick out the biggest problem of all, I would say the biggest problem of all was that the boys, Chester and Wilson, were unsure of Lily. And they didn't really want to meet her at first. And I would say the resolution, which means how that problem sort of got solved and how it all ended up. Lily stood up to the boys, and Chester and Wilson weren't afraid of Lily anymore. So they decided to be her friend after she stood up to the boys for them. Now, the theme here is the life lesson that we can learn from the story that we just read. I talked to some of my students this past week, and they gave me some great examples of life lessons that we can learn from this story. And if I use the different parts of all those themes that my students gave me, I would have to say, don't judge others by their appearance, and be ready to make new friends. You never know who could be a good friend, and you should never judge somebody based on their appearance. I think those are great life lessons to learn from this story. If we're looking at the main events in the story, in the very beginning, before Lily ever came onto the scene, we know that Chester and Wilson were best friends. That's the very first thing that happened that we know. And they did absolutely everything together. So they did things together and did things the same way. Then who came onto the scene? Lily moved into the neighborhood. And then what happened after Lily moved into the neighborhood? They all became friends. And then at the end of the story, what happened? We see that somebody else moved in. We see Victor moved in to the neighborhood. Now, unfortunately, we didn't get to hear very much about Victor. We saw that he acted a little on the crazy side. And the other guys, Chester, Wilson, and Lily, looked kind of scared. But I hope they don't do the same thing as when Lily moved into the neighborhood. I hope they give him a chance. So now let's take a look at comparing and contrasting. When I want to compare and contrast Lily, I have all these different things down here to look at. If I'm going to be talking about just Chester, all of those things are going to go in the side of the circle that has Chester's name above it. If I'm only talking about Lily, I put those things on the side that have Lily's name over it. And if it's something that they both share or have in common, I'm going to put that in the center where it says both. So, who liked to try new things? Well, the boys like to do things the same as each other, and they really didn't like to try new things. I would say that Lily was the one that liked to try new things. Who was the one that was less social, which means they don't like to play with their friends or be with others quite as much? I would definitely have to say that that's Chester, because Chester only wanted to do what Wilson wanted to do. Who liked to dress up? In the beginning, we know that Lily loved to dress in disguises, but the boys like to dress up for Halloween. So where would we put this one? I think we put it in the middle because they both liked to dress up. Who was the more cautious, safe one and kept a first aid kit in their pocket? That was definitely Chester. And then who was the one that carried a water gun in their pocket? That was Lily. Oh, this character only liked his best friend in the beginning. I think we all know that's Chester. This character liked to eat sandwiches. Well, who would that be? I seem to remember that Chester liked to cut his sandwiches diagonally, but Lily liked to cut hers into shapes. So they both liked to eat sandwiches. Someone liked to play in leaves. If you remember in the beginning of the story, Chester and Wilson loved to rake leaves and play in them in the fall. But once they made friends with Lily, they all liked to play in the leaves. And who was the more social one? The one who liked to talk to everybody or wave to cars when they came by? I agree with you. That is definitely Lily. Look at this amazing job you guys did comparing and contrasting Chester and Lily from our story, Chester's Way. Great job, guys. All right, guys, back again. This time we're finished with comparing and contrasting, and we are going to move on to reviewing homophones. Who can tell me what homophones are? You're right. They're two words that sound the same, but they're not spelled the same, and they don't mean the same. So if you take a look, we have several words here on our chart that sound the same when you say them, but they don't mean the same thing. The first one is sell and sell. It's like you sell something at the store. The second one is sell, like if you were using a cell phone, or if you were looking at a plant or animal cell under a microscope. The next set of words is bored and bored. The first bored is like you're at home and there's nothing to do and you say, Mom, I'm bored. And the second one is the type of board that you might use to build something like a house. There are all different sorts of homophones, and we're going to be watching a quick video talking about all the different types of homophones. Are you ready?
Hey yo, I'm the greatest rapper. No, not that kind of rapper. Homophones, let me talk to them. Yo, yo, yo. Hey, let's play a little game. Okay. With words spelled differently that sound the same. And their meanings are different. And you'll hear them right here, for instance. Right here. Let's take two and two. Three different words. Which one should you use? Listen, two is the preposition. It shows the relationship between people, places, and things. So you can say Stella went to the store, and to the mall, and to the seashore. Or what about two? That's a synonym for also. In addition, or more than one, and yup, thought so. Like Stella bought cupcakes too. If that's too many desserts, she can call up her crew of 2 or 3 friends. That's the number, y'all see. Looks like Stella's having a party. They're all gonna be there doing their thing. That's a lot going on. Are y'all following? There is a contraction of they and are, while there shows location or place. There you are. And there means belonging to or ownership. And there are plenty more words that we want to flip. But instead of doing too many, let's take it to the hook. Are the two of y'all ready?
Homophones, homographs, homonyms, commonly confused words. Let's begin. I live by a stage where bands play live. I could sit on the stairs and stare all night until the sun rises and sheds its light. Then I light a barbecue and cook up a bite. I'll give someday and walk down the aisle. If it's on the aisle, and I'll walk on the aisle.
Now some words are spelled the same, but sound different and have different meanings. Look around. You can feel the wind when you wind your kite string, and if it flies high, then you're doing the right thing. But what about Bryson playing bass? Then he fished for bass, and he stuffed his face. Or maybe you get a present for your birthday, then show up to school to present on Thursday. Some words sound and are spelled the same, but have different meanings. Let me explain. Okay. Your dog can bark at the tree bark, or you can light a match if it gets dark to shed a little light on your tennis match. And there are plenty more words that you can catch. Like you can lie down on your down blanket or pet your pet until it starts shaking. Tell the difference between these words when you're reading. Look for clues and observe the sentences and the other ones nearby that show what word is being used and why.
Homophones, homographs, homonyms, commonly confused words. Let's begin. Like I have a tree trunk in the trunk of my car, and I park it at the park. I don't want to drive far. I read the red book and I'll read it again. All I need a pair of pairs down to the stem. Whether or not the weather is nice, I'm allowed to read aloud over beats on the mic.
I read this sentence. There was a bat flying around the attic. Does the author mean there was a magical baseball bat flying through the air? Or an animal? I don't know.
All right, guys, we all know that we love our vocabulary videos. So when we talk about homophones, there were 3 different types of homos in that video: homophones, homonyms, and homographs. But homophones are the ones that sound different, but they are, no, sorry, I'm sorry, scratch that. I'm getting all confused. Homophones are ones that sound the same, but they're not spelled the same, and they don't mean the same. So the ones that are trickiest for us, sometimes they like to get us confused. They're the ones that say your and your. We also have other ones like there, and there, and two, and two, and its. But today, let's focus on your and your. The first your you see is a contraction, which means 2 words that have been put together. And when we put these together, or we could take them apart, they're made up of you and are. So when you're trying to figure out which one to use in a sentence, you can use the 2 words you are. And if it doesn't make sense, then we're not talking about the contraction. The other your is a possessive pronoun. Possessive means something belongs to someone. And your means that it belongs to, you got it, it belongs to you. So let's take a look at some examples that we see. If you don't hurry, you're going to be late for the game. Is that going to be you are, or is it going to be that something belongs to you? Well, let's try to fill in you are. If you don't hurry, you are going to be late for the game. Well, does that make sense? Absolutely. So is it a contraction or a possessive pronoun? You're exactly right. It's the contraction your, because we could fill the blank in with you are. The next one is the coach said that you're going to be a starting player. Could we fill that in with you are, the contraction, or would it be your, that something belongs to you? Let's use you are and see what happens. The coach said that you are going to be a starting player. That absolutely makes sense. So you're right. It's going to be your. It's going to be a contraction. Let's take a look at the next one. Don't forget to bring your water bottle to the game. Well, is that a contraction or is that a possessive pronoun? Let me plug in you are and see if it works. Don't forget to bring your water bottle to the game. Well, that certainly does not make sense. Let me try just your, the possessive pronoun. Don't forget to bring your water bottle to the game. Well, if it's your, the possessive pronoun, what belongs to you? You're right. The water bottle belongs to you. So it would be Y-O-U-R. And the last one, you're scoring a lot of points this game. Is it going to be a contraction or a possessive pronoun? Well, let's think. If it's a possessive pronoun, Y-O-U-R, well, what belongs to you? Your scoring, is it your scoring? No, scoring doesn't belong to you. Is it points belonging to you? No, that doesn't make sense. Well, let's try to plug in you are. You are scoring a lot of points this game. That makes sense. So my answer is your. It is a contraction. You're exactly right. You guys have done an amazing job today with comparing and contrasting, summarizing, and homophones. I have some homework for you, so I hope you're paying close attention. I'm going to show you how to get to my website. Oh, let me stop sharing there. All right. If we take a look, I have just typed in and gone to Miss Sweet's webpage. If you type in fvsweet.weebly.com. Again, let me say it one more time. fvsweet.weebly.com. You can see it in the address bar at the top. If you go here to these top two buttons, these are gym kits that you can play at home. I assigned them for homework and they should be completed by this coming Friday. There is a homophone gym kit and there is an area and perimeter gym kit for math. So please hop on to the webpage and do those for homework. You guys have been a great audience. I hope you've learned a little something extra and I will see you next time. Have a good one. Bye, guys.